We all know that feeling, right?
Oh, absolutely. That immediate visceral jolt you get when you hear about someone else.
Someone who just achieved the exact thing you wanted.
Exactly. A colleague gets the promotion, a friend hits a milestone, and for like 4 seconds.
Before you can even think.
Yeah, before you can form a polite thought, there's just this internal contraction.
That tightening in your chest. Our sources call it the 4-second reflex. And the critical thing is what happens right after. We immediately label it envy, and then, we moralize it.
Right, we tell ourselves, I'm so petty, or I'm a bad person for feeling this.
But the feeling itself is just biology. It's a fact.
And that is the exact spot we're doing our deep dive today, the Stoic perspective on that very painful reflex. Our mission is to figure out why the great thinkers, Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, why they didn't waste time trying to, eliminate the emotion.
Which they knew was futile. Right. Instead, they focused everything on managing the judgment you place on it. We're basically hunting for that misplaced measuring stick.
And what the Stoics teach is that at its deepest level, envy is almost never about wishing harm on someone.
No.
It's just the ego whispering, why wasn't it me? It's a completely self-centered complaint.
And that distinction, that it's about me, not them, that's the crucial starting point for any Stoic practice.
It is.
You acknowledge the feeling, you hear that whisper, why wasn't it me? But you immediately refuse to let that whisper dictate your next move. It's a signal, not a command.
And that refusal takes us right to the foundational tool that Epictetus taught.
The dichotomy of control.
The dichotomy of control.
You hear about it all the time in Stoicism, but when you apply it specifically to envy, it stops being this, academic concept.
It becomes an instant firewall.
Yeah, firewall against that emotional spiral.
It simplifies the problem immediately. When that envy strikes, you have to calmly, right in that moment, sort everything into 2 buckets.
Things I can control and things I can't.
Exactly. And the list of things you can't control is huge.
Oh.
Other people's fame, their achievements, whether the company promotes you or them, what the world thinks.
All of that stuff is external, it's unreliable, and ultimately is irrelevant to your inner life. But okay, when that jolt of envy hits, and it's so visceral, how do you stop yourself from just falling into that vortex of what you can't control?
That's where the practice comes in. Because what remains squarely within our control are our internal decisions.
Or reaction.
Our reaction to their achievements, the judgment we place on them, the effort we put into our own work, our preparation for the next time. The Stoic knows they can't control the outcome, but they absolutely must control their response.
So let's run a scenario, like the sources suggest. A colleague gets promoted. Sure. The default untrained response is what? Either denial, I didn't want that job anyway,
or self-flagellation. I'm not good enough, I'm a failure.
Right, but the Stoic does neither.
They engage in this instant, calm inquiry. 2 core questions, and they have to be in this order. First, what part of the situation is completely beyond my control?
The decision was made, the colleague did well, their experience was a better fit.
All external. Done. Then, second question, what remains within my control right now?
My breathing, my acceptance of this reality, my focus on my next task.
And most critically, my judgment about what their promotion actually means about me.
So the feeling doesn't just vanish, you still feel that pang.
Of course.
But the act of asking those questions, it separates the facts from the story you're telling yourself, and that removes the feeling's power to issue a command.
Precisely. And Seneca, a man who lives at the absolute height of power and influence, he hammered this point home. He said comparison is a path with no end. The second you measure yourself by what other people have, you place your standard of happiness outside of yourself. You are literally guaranteeing you will always feel a sense of lack.
Because there's always someone faster.
Always. Or richer. Or luckier.
So the internal monologue shifts. The non-Stoic is always asking, am I ahead? Am I behind? But the disciplined Stoic is just asking, am I living true to my own task today?
It's an internal check-in. It's stable and self-contained, not some external scorecard that's always changing.
Which helps you understand where envy even comes from psychologically.
It's not malice, it's survival. The sources point out that comparison is just. It's an innate reflex. The brain is constantly trying to figure out, where do I stand?
In relation to the tribe.
Exactly.
Yep.
So when you see others get ahead, the root feeling isn't, I wish they would fail, it's, uh-oh. What does this mean for my position?
It's about insecurity, not wickedness. And this brings in that brilliant idea from Epictetus about the impression.
The knock at the door?
Yeah, an impression, that pang of envy. It's just a knock at the door. It isn't the truth. It's just a signal that your ego has been touched. It's not the final verdict on your worth.
You have to treat it like a spam email.
Yeah.
It just shows up in your inbox.
Ah, I like that.
The feeling is unavoidable. But the judgment, that's you clicking the link inside, deciding to open it.
And following its instructions.
Right. And if you don't scrutinize that initial signal, the brain just follows the easy path, which is always to create a feeling of lack.
And the forces creating those signals today are, infinitely stronger than in ancient Rome.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the modern trap.
Modern society doesn't create envy in these big, rare moments. It creates it through rhythm.
The constant regular display and ranking of achievement.
Yes. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He knew that what really drains you isn't some grand desire for an empire, but the steady, daily drip of small comparisons.
The daily feed, the KPIs, the public metrics, the social media highlights.
We're always comparing our chaotic behind the scenes to everyone else's perfect highlight reel.
All you see is the finished product.
Right, and that constant rapid flow, it turns envy from something that happens occasionally into a kind of default state.
And here's the real conflict that the sources point out. Society sets these ridiculously external standards. You have to be progressive, be outstanding, be publicly recognized.
But then it demands the individual take all the responsibility for feeling like they're falling short.
Exactly. If you feel inadequate, the message is, you just didn't try hard enough.
It privatizes the emotional cost while socializing the standards. We're forced to live in the gaze of others, and when that gaze is constant, envy becomes dangerous. The measuring stick is always being pulled away from you.
You start confusing external recognition with internal worth, which leads us to the heavy cost of all this.
This silent erosion of your inner life. And this isn't about being physically tired from hard work. This is the loss of internal energy.
The quiet energy you need just to be at peace with yourself.
Yes. Regardless of who's getting credit. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this nameless fatigue all the time. It wasn't from his duties as emperor, it was from his soul being pulled away by the comparisons of the court.
And when envy becomes this constant, unexamined thing, you stop seeing it as a temporary signal. You start seeing it as an identity.
I'm just a jealous person.
I'm prone to comparison. And Epictetus warns so fiercely against this, confusing what happens within us with who we are. The moment you turn an emotion into an identity, you're chained to it.
And Seneca has the perfect description for the result of that. Poverty amidst plenty.
Yes.
You might achieve something huge, something you were genuinely proud of. You got the job, you finished the project, but the satisfaction lasts, what, minutes?
Because the next post, the next announcement from a colleague, immediately yanks that measuring stick away again.
You're rich in achievement, but you're poor in satisfaction.
Your standard is external, so every achievement is fragile. Today you're enough, tomorrow you're lacking. Envy just becomes this background noise.
A low-grade hum.
Yeah, hum in your internal world that makes it impossible to hear your own voice. You feel irritable, or tired, or you're just running at full speed, but you have no idea why.
And that low-grade hum is the Stoic signal. It's time to return to inner discipline.
It's the check engine light.
It is. It's why Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to that really severe question. If today were my last day, would I care where others are?
And that's not about being morbid.
No, it's about forcing a brutal return to the present moment, to the things you actually control right now. The slow, constant erosion is the real danger.
A life worn down by comparison just won't have the strength to live by any philosophy, no matter how good your intentions are.
So, okay, if eliminating the feeling is impossible, how do we fight back? How do we neutralize that 4-second reflex so it stops issuing commands? Let's get into the strategies.
Right. The first one, as we mentioned, is pure Epictetus, separate impression from command.
You are only an impression, not the truth.
You state that to yourself, you feel the tightness, you allow the emotion, but you forbid it from issuing a command. No self-punishment, no lashing out, no procrastinating on your own work because of it.
But how realistic is that really? That instant, calm inquiry when the feeling is so strong? I mean, most of us just default to self-criticism.
Which is why strategy 2 is the most brutally honest step, the non-moralizing question.
Okay.
Instead of asking, why am I so petty and small? The Stoic asks, what part of my neglected work is the other person's achievement touching?
Wow. So If a colleague gets a promotion, you don't blame them. You look at the source of the pain and realize they got that because I delayed my own prep 6 months ago.
I chose safety when I should have taken a risk, and now I'm feeling the cost.
So it's honest recognition, but without the self-pity.
You just identify the neglect. And that leads to strategy 3 from Seneca, which is limiting the scope of comparison. He warned against comparing yourself to the infinite crowd. It's just overwhelming.
So instead, the Stoic shrinks the frame of comparison down to one single stable point.
Today's task.
Just today's task. Not your lifetime achievement, not your social rank, just have I fulfilled my part today?
It's a quiet question. It doesn't give you this huge motivational high, but it's stable, and it's always controllable.
And that ties into the last one from Marcus Aurelius. Value behavior over the result.
Yes. When your value is placed on correct action and effort, which is always controllable, always in the present, rather than on unstable results or fame, envy loses its foundation.
Because envy feeds on external results.
Exclusively. That's the core cognitive discipline. The Stoic sees that society needs rankings and metrics. Fine, the KPI board isn't going away.
But you refuse to let it define your soul. You might be lower on the org chart, but that has zero bearing on whether you are internally whole.
It separates the value of the action from the value of the person. And this difficult, continuous practice is what leads to the Stoic vision of inner freedom.
Which isn't freedom from emotion.
It's freedom from being commanded by emotion.
Exactly. You still see other people get ahead. You still feel that very human contraction in your chest, but you don't have to defensively prove you're above it.
You just note that a feeling has appeared.
And you refuse to follow its directive.
That's the ultimate lightness. We don't need other people's success to shrink for us to feel okay. We find our own sufficiency through that humble, stable measuring stick.
Did I live up to my task today?
Just that.
That stability lets you engage with the world without constantly having to fight yourself. You won't have to go to war with yourself every single time the world reminds you someone else is ahead.
Which leads us to the final, essential question from the sources. This is really the ultimate test, and it requires some quiet reflection.
Here is. If tomorrow there were absolutely no one left to compare yourself to and no more rankings to look at, would you slow down or would you become lost?
Just hold that question. The goal of this discipline isn't to win against society's game of comparison. It's to avoid losing yourself while you play it. Find your stable task, and the background noise will finally start to fade.